We're now going to turn our focus to another crucial topic, strengthening the U.S.-India defense ecosystem. It's my honor to invite Shri Sanjeev Kumar, the Secretary for Defense Production at the Ministry of Defense, to the stage. And with him, I'd also like to request Dr. Vivek Lall, Chief Executive of General Atomics, Mr. William Blair, Vice President and Chief Executive for Asia and India at Lockheed Martin, and Mr. Jeff Shockey, Senior Vice President, Global Relations at RTX, to join the Secretary, along with Sonia Singh, the Editorial Director and Anchor of NDTV Dialogues. And lastly, let me welcome Ms. Sharmila Bharatan, President of Government Affairs and Policy at GE Aerospace, to introduce Shri Sanjeev Kumar and provide some scene-setting remarks for the discussion.
Good evening, everyone. The global defense ecosystem is rapidly evolving, and it's driven by three things: technological advancements, emerging threats, and shifting geopolitical dynamics. And India, with its growing defense needs and its commitment to enhancing self-reliance, is emerging as a key player in this space. And through its initiatives like the Atmanirbhar Bharat, Self-Reliant India, and the Defense Production and Export Promotion Policy, the Indian government is fostering an ecosystem that encourages indigenous defense manufacturing while embracing international partnerships to strengthen capabilities. This session will explore how India is positioning itself as a hub for defense innovation, manufacturing, and strategic partnerships. And with a special focus on US-India defense cooperation, the discussion will cover topics such as joint ventures, supply chain reliance, resilience, technology transfer, and the role of advanced technologies like AI, machine learning, quantum computing, and cyber defense. And it is my privilege to introduce Shri Sanjeev Kumar, a seasoned civil servant with 31 years in the Indian Administrative Service. Mr. Sanjeev Kumar has also served as the chairperson of the Airport Authority of India during 2021 to 24, 3 years, when we have collectively witnessed major advancements in the country's aviation infrastructure. And throughout his extensive career, he's made significant contribution to various sectors which include rural development and public participation initiatives. He started his journey in Maharashtra, where he spent 16 years working on rural development projects, and additionally was the commissioner of GST in Maharashtra, managing the state's GST framework during 20 and 21. He recently took charge as the Secretary of Defense Production in August this year. Please join me in welcoming Shri Sanjeev Kumar to deliver his remarks. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm really privileged to be here amongst you all and address this very important event, India Leadership Summit, organized by US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, and also meet the board members of USISPF led by Shri John Chambers. Under his dynamic leadership, USISPF has been working very closely with business and government leaders in both countries and creating meaningful opportunities. They have been great partners of the US-India defense and its strategic partnership. This particular event, USISPF India Leadership Summit 2024, offers a vital platform to strengthen the dynamic strategic partnership between Washington and New Delhi. The key priorities currently focus on enhancing supply chains, advancing AI and next-gen technologies, bolstering defense ties, and expanding bilateral trade between US and India. With the August gathering of senior cabinet ministers, USISPF's board delegation, global business leaders, and key policymakers in this summit for a discussion on strengthening trade in various important sectors, I am confident that our industrial and trade engagement will scale new heights. India and US together are formidable democratic forces which can effectively work for peace, prosperity, and stability in the world. Our Honorable Raksha Mantri visited US in August 2024 and described India and US as natural allies, which are destined to be strong partners, and this collaboration is going continuously, improving continuously. India-US major defense partnership has emerged as a pillar of global peace and security through joint exercises, the strengthening of defense industrial cooperation, annual 2+2 ministerial dialogues, and other consultative mechanisms. We have made significant progress in building an advanced and comprehensive defense partnership in which our militaries coordinate closely across all domains. The launch of dialogues in new defense domains, including space and AI, will enhance capacity building, knowledge and expertise sharing in these emerging areas. The strength of US-India defense relationship is eminently visible, with India being accorded Strategic Trade Authorization 1 STA-1 status and designation as a major defense partner. Successful completion of the Communications, Compatibility and Security Agreement, commonly known as COMCASA, and signing of the Industrial Security Annex. These are other important milestones that reflect the commitment from both the countries. We have also recently concluded the Security of Supplies Agreement, SOSA, which will support a resilient supply chain and allow participation of industries of the both countries in the supply chain of respective countries. It is heartening to see that many US companies in aerospace and defense are having significant presence in India in the area of vital manufacturing fields. Interaction between the business of both the nation is also increasing in defense and aerospace segment, both in terms of numbers and also volume of the trade. Landmark signing of an MOU between General Electric and Hindustan Aeronautical Limited for the manufacture of G414 jet in India is a key milestone. Our nation's desires to accelerate defense industrial cooperations lead to adoption of a defense industrial cooperation roadmap, which will provide policy direction to defense industries and enable co-production of advanced defense systems and collaborative research, testing and prototyping of projects. Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, ISET, will further support sharing of core technologies, collaboration in futuristic technologies, and fostering deeper cooperation in critical field. We have also formed US-India Defense, Technology and Trade Initiative Group, which seek to elevate US-India defense trade from a traditional buyer-seller dynamic to one of co-production and co-development partners. India now has created a fairly well-established ecosystem for startup and niche technology providers in defense and aerospace sector. A number of industries, including MSMEs and startup R&D units, are now getting involved to provide solution to the defense needs. The industries of both the nations can collaborate in adoption of the technologies and sharing of domain knowledge, which not only boost defense manufacturing, but will also create job opportunities and establish resilient supply chains. We invite you to invest in defense aerospace apart from various other sectors such as healthcare and infrastructure. We have raised the FDI cap for investment in defense sector to 74%. India has also established 2 defense corridors, one in UP and another in Tamil Nadu, to encourage production of defense equipment and platforms. I would like to invite US defense companies to take advantage of India's investor-friendly climate and start manufacturing in India. I once again thank USISPF leadership for their commitment to advancing India-US economic partnership. May the USISPF keep scaling new heights. Once again, I thank all of you to invite me and give me opportunity to speak to you. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank thank you so much, Mr. Kumar, for this insightful remarks. And I think it's really set the tone for this evening's special dialogue on the India-US defense partnership and how crucial it is to actually establish a secure future. So you actually said you wanted to invite top US defense companies, and we have representatives of all of them sitting here this evening. So let me start with you, Mr. Blair. You just heard Mr. Kumar speak, make the point that India is open to doing business with US defense companies. And I think what's been really crucial, which we've seen in the last years, is how the top leadership of both countries, now this is at the level of Prime Minister Modi, President Biden, the defense minister making his first visit as a new cabinet minister to the US, and key agreements being signed, the reference to the SOSA agreement. What do you think, as we see this relationship really accelerate and go into top gear, what are the top 3 things you'd like to see happen, and how would you respond to Mr. Kumar's invitation?
Well, I'd like to first start and recognize the tremendous progress with these foundational agreements. We could not collaborate in terms of bringing our best technologies and the collaboration, transfer of technology, co-production, co-development in India without the accomplishments over the last 8 years. I think you have to start with what's the foundation we have. I was with Vivek Lall here in 2006 when the first defense offset policy was being implemented. And we as US companies had to find a way to position for major procurements, a fighter competition at the time. And at Lockheed Martin, we established a joint venture with Tata, 2 actually. The first was Lockheed Martin, making in India, making for the world, producing C-130J empennages as the sole source, and now we've delivered over 225. That was a catalyst for the private sector defense ecosystem. Sikorsky did as well on S-92 helicopter cabins. And we did that out of opportunity, not offset obligation, as everyone thinks. It was out of opportunity. So I have to take us back to an earlier foundation that was set that allowed us to sit here today and look at the vast increase in production in India and for the world. Mm-hmm. And now to where we're, I think in India, the 50% of our defense exports are going to the US. And so that's allowed us now to be in a position. So to answer your question, what do we need to do going forward? We need to take it to the next level. Mm-hmm. We have to take it up to the platform level. And when we look at a platform, we bring the platform and our tier 1 partners. Mm-hmm. And that brings a level of transfer technology like the GE engine, which is foundational and transformational. And we see that opportunity, whether it's fighter aircraft, transport aircraft, or helicopters, building on the foundation of subsystems and taking it to a full delivered platform for India, for the world.
Mm-hmm. And Dr. Lall, I'd like to bring you in here because you've actually seen that journey, I mean, of course, based in the US, and we've gone really 360 degrees. It's amazing to see how far we've come from a time when there was, technology sanctions and blocks, and to the kind of accelerated cooperation. And the building blocks of the whole India-US defense relationship have actually been completely reshaped. Now, we've had that major drone deal, which was cleared at the time Prime Minister Modi was in the US. It's now through Congress. How much do you think deals like this and this mega deal really, you got Sea Guardian drones, Sky Guardian drones, what's the next frontier and how transformational is this going to be for the relationship?
Thank you, Sonia. Yes, indeed. I mean, as I've observed the journey over the last 20 years and from where we started to where we've come, and as Bill rightly said, I mean, we've gone through various stages of this relationship, but certainly a lot of the building blocks in terms of the foundational agreements and, India being part of MTCR and so forth, that has really catapulted to that relationship to being at such a stage that we are really poised at an inflection point for the future. I think the kind of collaborations is not simply built to print that's being envisaged, but actual entire platforms that can be designed, developed, and manufactured in India for the global export market. And so that's I think where the trajectory is going. Also, I think the trajectory includes relationships with startup companies, and And John has mentioned that quite passionately in his remarks in multiple occasions, and we in the defense industry see that happening. The startup ecosystem in India is very robust. I think some of the players are doing, world-class projects where we are partnering, for example, with an artificial intelligence company and a semiconductor company. And these are young companies with a lot of ambition, tapping into the global talent pool. And if I were to point to one segment of the Indian industry which I see the most potential, I would certainly say it's a startup ecosystem, because they bring a lot of innovation. And it's a two-way street. It's not only about technology coming into India, but some of the technology is going back to the US, and you'll see some of these startups with contracts with Space Force and other entities in the US. So it's very heartening to see, and I think innovation is at the root of everything we all want to be doing here collectively, and I think the future is very bright.
Mr. Shockey, if you could come in at this point. We saw, of course, the Quad summit meet also in the United States, and the Prime Minister talked of the Quad as a force for global good. But of course, the reality remains that we live in extremely turbulent geopolitical times. And at a time like this, especially for defense companies, for defense cooperation, security, collaboration, and ideas exchange, how crucial do you think this US-India partnership is?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question, and Mr. Secretary, thank you for your opening remarks. For somebody who's only been on the job for a month and a half, it feels like you already have a firm grip of your portfolio, so well done. Sonia, to your point, as you talk about whether it's ISET or security of the supply agreement or major defense partnerships, as the governments come closer, what you really see is U.S. industry and India industry coming closer and closer together. We as a company at RTX and our three businesses, Collins Aerospace, Pratt & Whitney, and Raytheon, we've been operating in India for about 70 years, so we have a long relationship. We've been manufacturing here for about 25 years. In fact, when I was here with this group last year, I think our employee count was 6,000 people. Just in the 1 year since then, we've already grown by 1,000 here. We've got plans to continue growing. If I look at our Pratt & Whitney business, 3 years ago, we had 30 engineers here. Today we have 700. In 2025, we're going to have 1,400 engineers. So we become closer and closer as the governments become closer. And I think it's an enduring relationship, irrespective of administrations. You see the United States and India, continue to have mutual interests, partnerships around the world, mutual security interests, and the ability to project peace and stability around the world, again, partnered with the industry as one of the leading forces. So.
I think that's an interesting one, Mr. Gupte. It's great to have you on as well. And just that point really about the ecosystem of US and India, the defense ecosystem, and how it joins in as a partner really in a much deeper, much more abiding, and really a relationship which is now based on growing trust between the United States and India. How do you see the defense ecosystem playing a role here?
Sure, thank you for that. And first of all, let me apologize for being late. I had to step out for an engagement to speak with another ministry. Respectfully apologize to the Secretary. Look, I think as it relates to building the ecosystem, we have to be bold. The days of having an asset-light approach in the ecosystem for India-US collaboration, that's 10 years ago, right? You're not going to have a hotel suite office somewhere, parachute people in and out, and expect to succeed in this market and expect the US-India ecosystem to succeed, right? You have to be fully invested not just in some of the things that Dr. Lall was talking about, the ability to co-develop and design platforms here, but also fully invested in the long-term operational readiness of these assets, the sustainment. So we're talking about having the ability to train here in India. We're talking about having the ability to sustain and to maintain for MRO here in India. We're talking about the ability to develop an ecosystem of suppliers that support not only the Indian defense industrial base, but also the US defense industrial base. And when we talk about the suppliers, we have to be bold there as well. Look, both us, Lockheed, we have joint ventures with Tata, large companies like Tata, large relationships with Mahindra, with Godrej, with Wipro, with L&T, and on and on. But that next tier of Indian industry, the MSMEs, are also going to drive that ecosystem's growth over the long term. So we have to be bold and we have to make those investments to develop many of those. That might mean pulling them from other industries. That might mean going and working with an auto supplier and working closely with them over the course of 5 years to make them certified to come into aerospace, right? These are all investments of time, of treasure, and of experience. But I think if we can do that, it's going to pay long-term dividends.
And Mr. Kumar, we've heard all these different perspectives, but I think that important point on building up the trust ecosystem as well, and the belief that US defense industry is here to be true partners, that there's going to be a sharing of technology, training. What is India looking at when we are talking about building this as a deeper partnership, about creating a new ecosystem?
Well, thank you very much, Sonia, for asking this question. In fact, it's always better to understand each other very well. So, US-India understand well. The requirement of India is understood by US and their industry doyens. Our requirement has been very categorically phrased by Honorable Prime Minister that we want to become Atmanirbhar, that is self-reliant. When we say we want to become Atmanirbhar, self-reliant, that means not only we should be amongst the nation which are able to safeguard our strategic interest and our territorial boundary, but we should continue to do in all situations. So we should be able to design, manufacture, develop, sustain our armed forces. And that's why the reliance on Atmanirbharta is there. Apart from the other goals of creating the ecosystem of industries, of cutting-edge level technology, which not only help defense industry, but also rub positively on the civil industry side, and creating the job opportunity in this country. So our objective is clear. We understand the US understand us, and over last many years, as has been shared by my fellow panelists, that there is a clear understanding of each other point of view and desire to work towards achieving those goals. And what we provide, as Mr. Gupte was saying, that we have big industry house, we also have very resilient MSMEs, startup companies, the organizations, individuals, research institute who can do a lot in the cutting edge technologies of AI, machine learning, and also in the space technologies. And we also have market, and we provide opportunity to create alternate, reliable, sustainable supply chain for the US industries, for their supply to the rest of the world, including US itself. So obviously we believe that a win-win partnership is possible, apart from our goals as two big democracies, the reliable democracies of the world. Our other interest also allow us to create win-win partnership, and our industries are also capable to create win-win partnership to the US industries. I hope things are aligned. Now the requirement is to continue this process and take relevant decision at the relevant time.
Mr. Blair, if you could come in on that. You mentioned earlier about the importance of the foundational agreements. How crucial do you think the security of supplies agreement actually is when we talk about building this partnership? And also, of course, given the fact that for India, the Indo-Pacific remains an area of security concern, what do you think that this actually, the Prime Minister said this about Quad, that we're not a force against anybody. This is a coming together for a global good. How do you actually see that play out in the current security environment and the need for building the US-India partnership in that context?
No, it's a great question. You know, from a security of supply agreement, it's going to, as I said earlier, build on a foundation to take us to the next level in terms of two-way collaboration. And I think at some of the earlier panels, there are startups today that are contributing into the U.S. DoD and Space Force. And that's a great exchange, as well as the investments that are being made here in India. But one of the things I'd like to address to the Secretary's comment is we talk about critical and emerging technologies. I think we need to talk about a critical need. And we think about resilient supply chains. We have a critical need for aerospace and defense materials. We heard on an earlier panel about rare earth metals. And there is capability today in India that I think through the foundational agreements, as well as the security of supply agreement, and I would suggest maybe through a public-private partnership, including universities, we need to take it to the next level, because with what's happening geopolitically, we don't have the same access to titanium, high-strength aluminum, rare earth metals in some of our neighboring countries that are not not supplying. And that becomes, I'll say, a strategic need, a critical need, whether it's aircraft engine technology and producing here in India, and we want to meet ultimately the goal of 50% indigenous content. That's a high bar. Mm-hmm. If you look at the light combat aircraft, when that went into service, it was not 50% indigenous content. It had to stepwise get to that level. So I think we need to collaborate and look at how the policy adapts, mm-hmm. and the government investment with industry can take us to the level of what we aspire to. I mentioned at the platform level, but really at all the systems level. Mm-hmm. It's going to take all of us working together.
That's an ambitious target, and I said no better place to state it than on this panel. But Dr. Lall, you've been talking, of course, and you mentioned to me that you actually began at NASA as an engineer, and we're seeing what all the new breakthroughs are every day. We saw that parallel parking yesterday happening on SpaceX. But space and AI, which the Defense Secretary also mentioned in his speech, as really the frontiers of the future. Do you think that's somewhere the US-India partnership can really get the early starter advantage?
I think so. I think there's great potential in space. I think you've seen greater interest in the United States, but also in India, and there are a lot of overlap that has been talked about earlier today as well. I do feel, just to footstomp something Salil and Bill said, from an indigenization perspective, MRO is going to be critical for a lot of the platforms. And the indigenization, as you develop the MRO, will be a catalyst to getting a whole supply chain put into place, as the Honorable Secretary has mentioned in his remarks, which is a requirement. And I think the same thing will go as we look at opportunities in space. And I know space is also going through its own policy changes to allow private sector to get involved more so in India. And I therefore believe there will be greater partnerships. And there, again, going back to my comment on startup companies, there are several startups in space in India that are now launching rockets of their own. Mm-hmm. And I see that as a growing sector. I do see space defense as another frontier that will come up. I think communications in space is going to be another area of potential joint collaboration, other than the manned space missions, etc. Mm-hmm. So on artificial intelligence, I do feel that it's like electricity. Artificial intelligence was around 40 years ago as well, but now you're getting the backbone infrastructure in place to be able to leverage it for something useful, and it will change the way we do business in almost all the sectors. Mm-hmm. But I think relative to what we're seeing some of the startup companies doing, and we are, for example, producing a joint product with one of the artificial intelligence companies for data dissemination and data management, which I think is going to be very important, especially as we talk about deterrence of war and deterrence of that situation in the geopolitics. I think one of the key parts of that is going to be how much information one knows, and intelligent information one knows, and that's through persistent surveillance. Mm-hmm. And I think AI has a big role to play in that.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Shockey, if I could really bring you in on this, India's focus on really Make in India, Atmanirbhar and indigenization. How does that really play out with, say, what US defense companies and what they're looking at as well? Mr. Blair mentioned the high bar for us in India. It's fantastic to see the jobs, the local supply chains, the technology coming in. How does it play out from a US perspective?
Well, I think as we all struggle to recover from COVID and the fragile supply chains, I think as demand for our systems increases, we can't meet that demand in our US facilities. So it's not like we're taking jobs from one area and moving them over here. It's we're trying to meet worldwide demand, set up a resilient ecosystem so we have redundancy, so we have that security of supply chain. And I think it's a win-win. And I think both governments view it that way. And I know policymakers in the United States see it that way too, because we, along with a number of my colleagues, we continue to be asked to produce faster, to make more of them. And right now our factories can't support that and our supply chain can't support that. So it's incumbent upon all of us to work together to meet that demand, meet that security need that we have around the world. So I think it's a win-win, and I think both sides recognize it. Now it's on us to capitalize on that.
Mr. Gupte, if I could just bring you in another aspect. I mean, we all live in a multipolar world now, and really it's a time when India especially is, as our foreign minister would say, it's really the India way. We're looking at global partnerships. We've seen many companies vying for getting a slice of the pie, as it were, in India. How do you think, what's different about the India-US relationship? We've talked about the shared democratic values. How much of an abiding partnership do you think? How strong does that make the partnership, and what's special about this?
Well, I think, look, as an Indian American, I grew up at a time when perhaps politically speaking, India and the US were in a bit of a different place. But interestingly enough, culturally speaking, the people-to-people ties were always incredibly strong. And what you've seen now over the last 25 years is the evolution such that you have strength across the board. And you have that trust that the SecDP was talking about earlier that has really developed and strengthened. And as you have that, I think it creates a tremendous number of opportunities. I think you've seen changes in policy, right? You've seen those foundational agreements and things like that Bill was talking about. But I think you also see you see comfort around things like intellectual property. There are places in the world where the US and US companies have had nervousness about that. That is not as much the case in our business in India. You see this incredible step up in quality of manufacturing. So tomorrow, the Indian Foundation for Quality Management is having its symposium here in Delhi. This is an organization that wouldn't have existed 15 years ago. But quality in Indian manufacturing is recognized by US companies. Let me just give you an example. The global aerospace supply chain, as Mr. Shockey just noted, is struggling, right? Especially also in the US. It's probably delivering somewhere between 60 to 80%, somewhere in there on average, on-time delivery. For most of the, I would say pretty much all of these companies that are sitting on the dais who have supply chains in India, I am almost certain that number is in the high 90s for all of us. It is breathtaking performance. And that builds trust, right? It is just comes down to performing, and Indian companies have done that. And so, that trust deserves to grow over time.
Mr. Kumar, I know you've just come in and taken just about a month and a half, but do you see this partnership as really the one which has the potential to scale up or touch new frontiers? Do you see we've had a very exciting last 3 years and suddenly a flurry of agreements in the last 6 months as well? What do you see as the big targets or your ambitions for this in the years to come?
It's difficult to quantify for me to quantify these targets, big mission. But as I see is the trust between two industrial cultures, back in USA, Mr. Gupte is saying that now US company are understanding that, are recognizing that the quality of output given by Indian companies Our need for technology is very clear, and our desire to develop those technologies with the leaders in that technology in USA is also very clear. Our capability, we have demonstrated earlier, we will continue to demonstrate. So the way I see is that the relationship is going to be strong and strong in coming years, not only between government to government, but also industry to industry. And we are deepening that relationship by taking this relationship between startup and startups, MSMEs and MSMEs. I think that we have all the ingredients to manufacture in India, to develop in India, to carry out the research activities, not immediately, but down the line to develop the product which can be manufactured and supplied to the rest of the world. We have all the talent here. I hope in coming decade we will see very, very strong relationship between US industries and Indian industries, not only in defense sector but also in other sectors.
That's excellent to hear, and I'd love to open up this session for any questions. If anyone in the audience does have, we've got an absolutely fantastic panel here. I don't think we'd be able to assemble this anywhere else. So if anybody has any questions. Mr. Chambers, anything you'd like to ask?
If you call me John, I won't feel old. Very often we come and we say we want to do business together and we're building the relationship at the same time. Give each of us from the defense side some guidance on how's the best way to interface to you and your team. What would you recommend we do, and what would you recommend we do not do to be effective and develop that trust? And I know you've only had a month and a half on it, but I watched your mind. I watched your eyes when you're thinking. Give us some guidance in terms of helping us on that.
It's basically, though I have not applied my mind and I'm not very old in this job to really have that response come from my knowledge intuitively, that is not possible. But what I see is that what we need is very long-term partnership, roadmap, so that our goal of self-reliance, Atmanirbhar, become realistically possible. We should be able to see that. And also the integration of our industries, MSMEs, startup in the supply chain, so that they also meaningfully contribute and become capable. Basically, almost it's like that almost all of the students in the class are good, but some of them have that slight X extra.
Yep.
So we are looking for that slight X extra with your help. And if that can come fast, in a manner which is equitable, I think we are looking for that.
So you're not saying what you're not looking for, Mr. Kumar, what they shouldn't do.
In fact, what they should do, clearly narrate what they should not do.
Okay.
Isn't it?
Yes. Do we have any other questions? But Dr. Lall, do you want to, with your experience, and I said this, Salil, to Dr. Lall earlier, that I really think having Indian American CEOs at the helm of these companies is really such a great trust factor as well. So how would you like to chip in on that question as well?
And I've observed this in other countries too, but particularly in the U.S.-India relationship, I think there are 6 buckets of stakeholders that need to come together to make the progress that the Honorable Secretary is saying. One is the political spectrum on both sides, and we have great alignment on that. The other is the bureaucracies, because there are different ways of doing business and in terms of acquisitions and on productions, so forth. The third would be the industry captains that are in the room, both on the Indian side and the American side. The fourth would be, I would say, often not much talked about, but the academics, the think tanks, and those, they may not show up on org charts per se, but they are very important in shaping the environment and so forth. The fifth would be the media, and as you know, the important role of media in public perception. And finally, the end user. So at the end of the day, if the end user, the Air Force, Navy, Army, require a certain capability, then all of these buckets of stakeholders come together.
I think that's a very clear outline. I think Colonel Singh, you have a question. And do you need a mic? Oh, there it is. Yes.
question, yeah. Hi, good evening, Secretary. And in fact, this question is for, esteemed panelists here from the defense side. You know, we talk about co-production and co-development, and we do have issues of 50% IC content to be manufactured. When we are looking at co-production and co-development, there is always an issue of IPs that come up in. How do you feel we should manage this aspect of IPs? We can have thoughts from Salil and Bill and Vivek in case possible if we have time. Thank you.
Go ahead, Salil, sure. And then Bill, would be great to hear from you.
I'll start. I mean, look, IP, there's plenty of ways you can handle it, right? There's JV structures that give you some comfort on IP. I think there's two elements of it. There's comfort around the IP itself from a corporate standpoint. There's JV structures, there's subsidiary structures. Many of us have used those to get comfort around those. But then there's also, of course, the policy element around export controls. And I talked about being bold earlier, right? In order to enable co-development and co-production, each of us, from the Indian side and from the US side, we're going to have to ask for what we want, right? There's going to have to be some tweaks on the export control side to enable this IP tech transfer, this tech transfer. There's also going to have to be some tweaks on the Indian side with regards to Indian subsidiaries and all of that to enable this IP transfer. So we're going to have those conversations and take them forward here over the next few years to make co-development all it can be.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add, I mentioned about building on the foundational agreements and taking the relationship up to the next level. You look at under ISET Javelin, and you look at bringing and advancing the level of technology with what Vivek's doing with the MQ-9s and what we can do with, say, fighter aircraft. It requires a hybrid approach, too, and that's going to require a level of trust on IP, but it's also going to require a level of ability working with our governments on a government-to-government, deliver the technology or the data that may be held on a government-to-government basis. We need our systems and our companies to be able to work through that framework. We're living it today, right? We'd like to deliver Javelin on a land system. But to do that, we've got to propose our offering through a prime Indian company. We need to have our countries, our government-to-government process to allow us to deliver the data, deliver the price on a foreign military sale basis on subsets, because that's part of the total solution. And that's how we get to delivering the maximum capability. We got to find a way for our systems to accommodate that, remove friction from the system, like we like to say. And I think that's building on that level of trust, whether it's IP, transfer of technology, or data that's provided and capability on a government-to-government basis.
Jeff, final thoughts from you.
Well, I would just build on what Salil and Bill said. As our policymakers in the US and in India are given these new tools to try to move forward on different kinds of IP exchange, working together, we've got to change the mindset of the old way of doing business and become more creative, more flexible as a way to gain the momentum with these new tools. So I think there's a lot of upside, Mr. Secretary, for you and your role and for your counterparts in the United States, and clearly for all of us on the stage and for many of our colleagues in the audience. So I'm excited about the future. I hope you are with your new job, and we all look forward to working together. And one of the things you didn't say when you talked about what you wanted to see or not see out of industry, I think what it's incumbent upon all of us is meet our commitments, make sure we're delivering the capabilities that you and your services need and desire, and make sure we're doing it in a timely fashion. So we look forward to working with you as we move forward.
Well, Mr. Kumar and everyone on the panel, Salil, Bill, Jeff, and Vivek, thank you all for being here. It's an absolutely fantastic and I think very energizing and interesting discussion. Thank you, and thank you for being such a great audience. Thank you.